This video is about social urban policy, and it's a video to mix and match three readings from week 3, week 4, and week 8. Social policy making entails devising policies that are accordance with social ideals of justice, equality, and prosperity. It includes goals such as equitable distribution of wealth, improvement in quality of life. As of common people's perspective, social policy is termed as holistic as well as sectorial terms. Sectoral definitions highlight certain sectors such as housing. These sectors are labeled as social and become the focus of social policy making. Holistic definition, on the other hand, addresses a broader range of issues in which concerns are grounded. It was the reaction to the narrow approach of the sectoral domain. Therefore, urban social policy making is concerned with planning urbanization in a socially viable way in which neoliberal trends. Participation of women and gender mainstreaming must be tracked without any doubt. Firstly, the substitution of social urban policy with market economy in neoliberal urban world. As far as urban housing is concerned, in the past, housing was viewed as a basic commodity rather than a financial asset. Neoliberalism transfigured the concept of housing by bringing it into the fold of financial institutions. It has hindered the social urban policy. Housing is not viewed as a market good that can be rationally allocated by the market. It is no longer a social good that societies are obliged to provide or share with those who cannot afford it. In neoliberal societies, housing is not an agenda of social policy. Deregulation of financial market, privatization of public housing facilities, and cut on social welfare program mark the current socio-economic setups. This leaves no space for housing to be a social goal or agenda of social urban policy. It is merely other commodity to be traded in a market-driven economy. This is a video filmed on my rooftop, and it's an example of the commercial value is bigger than the real value. The value of 1 square meter in this residential community is higher than 20,000 Canadian dollars. In comparison, the average wage in Shanghai, which is the most flourishing city in China, is 15,000 Canadian dollars a year. To buy a 100 square feet residence might take 30 years of effort. Even though the government established a series of housing policies to restrict the price, but the market did not cooling down. Similarly, laws has been changed or revoked to make way for capitalist system and shrink space for social welfare programs. For instance, this picture. This house in Vancouver is worth $2.4 million because of the location. This created a superficial surge in housing prices bubble economy of housing. Increasing prices of housing created affordability issues for every household that was supposed to have access to housing. This has implications of social urban policy. Policymakers need to rethink the role of the financial sectors in social sectors, such as housing. Also, financial takeover of the housing sector has shrunk the space for the bulk of locals. Capitalized housing market aim at creating state-of-art living spaces that are affordable only by wealthy locals and foreigners. This also exposes the masses to big corporations with whom they have to compete to secure land and housing. This point exposes the flaws in neoliberal social urban policies. Neoliberal order has deregularized the market. This leads to encroachment of market economy on areas that were previously considered a part of social, not economic policy. Policymakers need to revisit the decision made in wake of liberalization. Finance-driven system has narrowed down the space available for laymen in housing sector. Housing is extremely expensive and under the control of markets rather than the government. In markets, there's no social spirit and every man has to fend for himself. Therefore, the housing crisis has exposed the flaw in social urban policy in the neoliberal era by not even including women in the urban policy making. Moreover, social urban policy is not concerned with the areas outside of capital strategies of livelihood. And Neoliberal regulations. This marginalization of women are serious implications of their social as well as economic and political status. Women who are absent from policy making are also sidelined from the political arena. They are left to the requirement of capitalist system. Without any political backing, therefore, the absence of women from the policy landscape has serious repercussions of their political wars too. Social urban policy making fails to address the social issues that specifically pertain to the lives of women in the urban world of today. There's a little to no mention of how urbanization and cuts in social benefits are unequal repercussions for men and women. For instance, the unemployment rate of women is higher than men, and there are also more women below the poverty line. All these issues can be addressed by making women a subject and object of social urban policy. Therefore, social urban policy continues to androcentric with a narrow space of women to express and secure their interests and needs, especially non-reproductive needs. Now I want to talk about an example of females as a policy maker, which is the city Barcelona. Barcelona is a city imagined by women. Although cities are supposed to be built for everyone, they are in most of time thought planned and designed by men. Cities are supposed to be built for all of us, but they aren't built for all of us. With a female mayor on board and the feminist agenda, for the past 4 years, Barcelona has been undergoing major transformations on this subject. For example, closer to the needs of the bathrooms, create an equal playground, consider the needs of women when traveling, provide resting benches, and prevent violations. After talking the positive examples, I want to talk about the issues of social urban policy in the globalized world with special reference to gender mainstreaming. Furthermore, social urban policy has failed to achieve gender equality and neutrality in the globalized world. Gender mainstreaming refers to evaluating the impact of policies on different genders and achieving gender equality. Globalization surprisingly has hindered gender mainstreaming in policy making. Globalization has landed the world into planetary urbanization and global policymaking platforms. International organizations devise goals and policies that are meant for global, but they fail to acknowledge a difference in the conceptualization of gender and urbanization across the globe. Most of the meaning is lost merely in translation. For instance, safety in the West is conceptualized and the female lives independently, free of fear. But in some Eastern cultures, however, conceptualizing security has been under the safety of a male guardian. Such practices would be considered violent and subjugated. In Western cultures. Global policy guidelines, therefore, tend to exacerbate gender inequalities through push of uniform policies in diverse cultures. This exposes the shortcoming in social urban policymaking. Urban policymakers fail to acknowledge local requirement and push for global policies implementations. Sustainable development goals, for instance, have gender equality as one of the main agendas, such guide policymakers. However, it has not addressed the more urgent needs, without which attainment of this goal would be impossible. Gender equality can be taken as the agenda of policy in the Western world, but not in countries like Afghanistan. It first requires a secure and stable environment and a shift in social norms. Pushing for gender equality backfires in such countries by calling forward strong antagonism of conservative segments of society. Therefore, gender equality remains a dream in social urban policy due to the lack of ecological validity of West-centric global policies in the rest of the world. Overall, social urban policy entails developing urban practices that are in accordance with social ideals of equality and justice. Factors such as neoliberal financializing of housing, marginalization, integration of women in the policy arena and lack of ecologically viable as well as gender-sensitive global policy guidelines has deteriorated the social urban policy. Simply established policies like female-only trains like India is a sloth administration, which does not bring gender equality one step further. On the contrary, it restricts women's rights in public spaces. Gender equality should address the fundamental structural contradictions through a series of institutional optimization and face the biological differences between men and women. Therefore, policymakers need to revisit the excessive liberalization and focus on globalization.